Hello Mares, it's great to have you back for another video from our Let's Play series, Twisted Dunes, on the Oasis map. I'm your builder, Noob Build Cities, NBC for short. In the last episode, we built an exquisite European suburbia area on the starter tile where our industry used to be. This allowed us to boost our population up to about 35,000, who are now hungry for work, driving us to expand our industry. But before we do that though, we need to build us a power plant to provide the power the new residents and industry need to prosper. I have already picked up some potential assets to use for this nuclear power plant build, so let's get started. And while we do some terraining and set this area up for our nuclear power plant build, let's just talk about some of the common problems I see on Reddit and some of the Facebook groups that I participate in regarding power. The first problem that gives people a headache with power is sometimes you'll build a power plant and build out your city, say like on the first starter tile. Then you'll unlock another tile or two. You'll start building another area. You might lay down a few more power plants. And the next thing you know, you have a bunch of power symbols and you go into the power info view and you're way in the green and you're like, what's going on? I have plenty of power. Why am I having power issues? And 9 times out of 10, that's because you've created multiple grids, not one large grid. And what you need to do is use the power info view just to kind of see where all the connections are and make sure that all your power plants are connected to each other as well as to your city. Because you got to remember, even though the info view might show you in the green, it's like the total power in the city. It's not a power for any particular area. So you could have a nuclear power plant powering like 5 houses and one wind turbine powering 30,000 citizens, right? And those 30,000 citizens don't have power, but you have full green. So you got to make sure, like I said, that the nuclear power plant's connected to your area with the 30,000 citizens and all your power is connected. Or if you set up some kind of like windmills in a farm, or you're powering some kind of freshwater outlet for a waterfall or something like that, and you look and you just have enough power and you haven't connected that to your main grid, just keep in mind you need to account for the fact that you might have, like I said, power plant powering like these little pockets of like little projects that you're working on. And the game is, of course, showing you the totality of all your power, but not all that power is going to your zoned areas. And another thing I see often that might create multiple grids is maybe you've built a city and you have some issues, health issues, death issues, garbage issues, where buildings are going abandoned. You may have snapped the power line to an area that was previously lit up blue, right? Showing that it has electric power, and you say you ran it across the waterway to like the other part of your city. But what happened was the buildings that were making like that blue area went abandoned and they don't transmit power anymore, right? So then now you have like a temporary loss of connection. So if you do get yourself into a situation where you're starting to see power issues and you also have abandoned buildings in your city, just look around, see where your abandoned buildings are, see if you find like a power line that's kind of like floating out there and it's lost that connection because that abandoned building no longer extends the power. So those are the 2 most common power issues I see. Another one might be efficiency, and it's not that hard to determine the efficiency. You can actually find it on the wiki. There's like a table that has all the efficiencies for all the generating stations. You can do the math on your own on your cell phone with a calculator. You just take the weekly cost and divide it by the total megawatts. You'll get a cost per megawatt per week. Use that if you want to be really efficient, or you're worried about finances to determine what power plants to put down. I can just tell you from experience, in general, the green power from like green cities, DLC, is more efficient than the fossil fuel power. The hydroelectric power plant is the most efficient source of power in the game, provided you get 700 megawatts or higher. If you get the full 1600, I think it's something like $2 or $3 a megawatt. To put that in perspective, I think solar, which it might be the next one, is like 6. It's like double. And I think wind might be like 8 or 10. It's been a little while since I've done the numbers. Of course, you can fact check me on those. Here in this build, we're going to go ahead and place down the nuclear power plant. Just because I'm not that worried about the efficiency, to be honest with you. So the way we're going to set up this power plant, we're going to have a nice gated entrance coming into it. It's going to have some security to it. There's going to be a nice parking lot with some fountains and stuff in the front. So it's going to have a nice view as you enter into the power plant. We're going to use the local and organic produce zoning to zone up the Edison charging station to give us the parking lots. I'm going to use the Science Center as like our main building. It looks really cool. It's kind of got this somewhat industrial but somewhat futuristic look to it. And we're also going to use 2 nuclear power plants in this build. We're going to line up the cooling towers right next to each other and a handful of other unique buildings and different assets to create this nuclear power plant complex. And while we place down a few more assets, I want to talk about one other thing that really gives people trouble that's kind of related to power, and that's going to be zoning out an area and it not growing. This happens to me often, especially as the city kind of matures, as well as I see it posted a lot on Reddit and other sites. And like I said, I see this very often. People will zone out whatever type of zoning it might be, and there's also demand for it, but for whatever reason it doesn't grow up. The buildings don't fill in. And what I found to be the solution to kind of jumpstart the area is run a power line right up against one of the zone tiles to give that power footprint, and then the buildings will start coming in around that power line. So if you do find yourself in that situation where you've zoned an area and they won't grow in, try just running a power line right up against it. I mean, literally right up against the actual zone tile, and let it run for, a few minutes to see if it starts growing in. And the power plant's looking really nice. And I guess the last thing I want to talk about in regards to power that may be somewhat controversial is what power you should use when you start your city. I know there's a lot of folks out there that'll advocate using the coal plant when you first start your city. And of course, there's nothing wrong with choosing whatever power source you want to. And coal does have its advantage of being convenient. You just place down that one power plant, and it's going to last you quite a while before you need to place the second plant down. The problem with coal, though, is it's costly in 2 ways. The first way is it hits your budget pretty hard in the beginning. It's got a high initial cost, as well as it does have the higher operating cost than a wind turbine. Now, the wind turbine in total, so if you were trying to put down enough wind turbines to equate to a coal power plant, would have a higher initial cost. That is definitely true. But the benefit of wind, if you have wind available where you can get the maximum amount of wind generated, which I think is 8 megawatts, is you only need to put down one at a time. And that's usually how I start my cities. If wind is available, I will be using wind turbines. And that's how, when I start a city, after about 2 minutes of running the simulation, and I have maybe 2 blocks of industry, 4 blocks or 5 blocks of residential, and 1 block of commercial, I'm making money. And then I will continue to make money for the rest of my city's life, because wind is just cheaper. It's about $10 a megawatt per week. And coal, I think, is either 14 or 16 megawatts a week. You can fact check me on that. It's been a little while since I've done the math. So you're saving some weekly cost. And like I said, the benefit of the wind turbine is you can place it down one at a time. So as your city grows, you'll grow into the next turbine. And that'll carry on for a little bit, and then to place the next turbine, and so on. So that way the initial cost, which is higher than in coal, doesn't hurt, because you're not putting them all down at once. And the benefit too is, in this game, initial cost is a factor, but it's not that big of a factor because assets don't degrade or erode or fail after a certain period of time. They last forever. So the first wind turbine I put down in the beginning of my city could be spinning 250 years later, which means that the driving cost of that asset is going to be the weekly cost, the maintenance cost, we'll say, not the initial cost, which is why I advocate for wind as the starting power plant in your city, if the wind is available and you can maintain the full amount of wind, so 8 megawatts. So if you're playing like me, no weather, no night cycle, the wind will always be blowing. That's fine. If you're playing with dynamic weather and day-night cycle, it's going to vary because you might lose some of the wind. And that's all I think I have to say about power. It was a lot. I hope it was helpful. And leave a comment below. I love wind. Or no, I hate wind. I use coal. You're wrong. Whatever. And of course, it's a game and there's no competition. Have fun. Use whatever power source you want to use and build whatever you want to build and do what you want to do. It's your city. You're the mayor. And what I want to do here, I think, is remove the medium warehouse and place the large warehouse. And I paused the game because all my parking would be destroyed right about now if I didn't. So I'm holding my breath, and hopefully that'll come back. I got to make sure that I zone it back in, because sometimes when you blow up the roads, you lose the zoning. And in this square, I want to go ahead and build a substation, or my best representation of a substation that I think I can make with what we have. And we'll have like a power line come out of the back of the power plant and run to like the substation. So some of you know I do work for an electric company, and I have a pretty good handle on the electric power distribution and transmission system in the United States. And oftentimes generators at the power plant generate the power up to 15 kV, so 15,000 volts, and they use a step-up transformer. And that's what we're going to assume we're going to build here at this substation, is the generator. We're going to pull the 15 kV off the generator. We're going to step it up to anywhere between 69 to common voltages are probably 500 kV to 500,000 volts. And it depends on a lot of things where the power needs to go. And we'll assume that this power station generates at 15 kV, and the substation we're building here at the power plant steps it up to 69 kV, which goes into the transmission line and transmits the power to the substations locally in our city, which will then convert it down to 12 kV distribution voltage, which will then go to your house and convert it down to 120/240. And the power plant is looking pretty slick. I like it a lot. I think it looks really good. Let's go ahead and do some work at the entrance of the power plant. And what I think I want to do here is use some of the industry's DLC assets to kind of create like little guardhousey type places. Just make the entryway a little bit more imposing, a little bit more secure. So we use the oil maintenance building on one side. And I think what we'll do is, I'm not sure exactly yet. So I got two of them on here. Which one do I like best? I think I want to keep the road tighter to the plant. So we'll use the oil industry maintenance building on the left. And then we'll use the ore barracks on the right. And that creates like a chute that you got to funnel down into. And then you have the toll booth will just be the guardhouse. Unfortunately, we don't have actual guardhouses on console, at least. And then we'll just throw in a couple Park Life DLC assets in this little spot. Maybe they're like little maintenance buildings, guardhouse buildings. I don't know. Use your imagination. Visitor badging areas. My parking lot's almost done, so that looks good. And ta-da! The power plant is built. Hooray! This power plant used a lot of assets. We have Park Life in here, campus in here, Industries DLC in here, Green Cities Local and Organic Produce, Japanese Creator Pack. We have Sunset Harbor Waste Processing Complex in here. So let's go ahead and take a look at it. I love the oil maintenance building on the left and the ore barracks on the right. Looks great. Toll booth looks great. We have a campus fountain and a little unique plaza with our science building. It looks great. Parking lot looks great. Love the trees. I ended up removing one of the unique buildings and placing down to some office to generate some more jobs. And we have the oil barracks in here tucked in with the waste disposal unit from the Japanese Content Creator Pack. We have the water pumping station and water tanks. I think that's from Natural Disasters DLC. I added some generic industry in here just to give us some of those like fuel-y like type assets. We also have two oil storage units in here set to fill. That way they fill up, they don't do anything. And that's next to the waste processing complex from Sunset Harbor. Of course, we have our 2 nuclear power plants in the background, and then we have the large warehouse. And we have the little substation in the corner that uses the monorail track as bus work, and the maintenance building from the university as like a control house building, maybe where all the breakers and stuff are, and relays. Well, I think it's time to go. It was a pleasure to have you along for this nuclear power plant build. And in the next episode, I'm going to show you how to make generic industry look amazing. And I hope you enjoyed the build. If you did, please leave a like to help support and grow the channel, as well as I'd love to have you become a family member by subscribing. If you'd like to interact with me live, stop by my Twitch page. The link is below. Shoot me a follow. That way you'll be notified the next time I stream. I wish you fellow mayors the best and brightest success in your cities. And as always, happy building.